We finally don't have to live in fear anymore. I forced a smile and helped him pack. Until I saw a family photo. I finally understood why my daughter cursed our entire family. I clutched the family photo, my knuckles turning white as the edges dug into my palm. The frame slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering to the floor, the glass shattering into 1,000 jagged pieces. David's head snapped up, his grin fading into a scowl. What's wrong with you? We don't have time for this. I finally understand, I whispered, my voice raw and broken, barely audible over the hum of the gas that had already started to seep into the living room, thick and sweet, curling around my ankles like a dead man's fingers. I finally understand why Lily's words always come true. David froze mid-step, his hand hovering over the suitcase handle. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of something that looked a lot like fear, real fear, not the cowardly, self-serving terror he'd shown when Lily had warned him about cars, crossing his face. What are you talking about, Sarah? Spit it out. We need to go before she wakes up? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that tore at my throat. I pointed at the photo, the one that had been taken on Lily's first birthday, the day before Arthur died. The day Lily had first said die. In the picture, Arthur was holding her, his face crinkled with that same warm, indulgent smile he'd worn when she'd repeated the word that morning. David was standing next to them, his arms slung around Martha's shoulders. And in the background, half hidden by the curtains, was a man. A man I hadn't paid attention to in years, not since that day. A man with a scar slashing across his left cheek, a man wearing a jacket with the logo of the construction company that had built our neighborhood. A man who was dead. He was here, I said, my voice rising, the gas making my head spin, my vision blurring at the edges. On Lily's birthday. He was watching us. I thought he was just a worker from the site down the street, but he wasn't. He was a hitman, David. A hitman you hired. David's face went ashen. He stumbled back, his wheelchair knocking into the wall with a loud thud. That's a lie. You're crazy. You've always been crazy, Sarah, ever since Lily was born. Am I? I hissed, stepping closer, the shards of glass crunching under my feet. I pulled the diary from my pocket, the one Lily had torn up, the one I'd taped back together piece by piece after she'd run out. I flipped to the last page, the one she'd written in messy, childlike handwriting, the ink smudged from tears. Daddy hired man to hurt Grandpa. Grandpa die. Man get money. I looked up at David, my eyes burning with a rage I'd been suppressing for years, a rage that had been festering since the day Arthur had fallen down the stairs, his head impaled on that nail. You didn't just hire him to kill Arthur, did you? You hired him to kill Martha too. And then you tried to kill me, on Christmas Eve. You set off those fireworks, didn't you? You knew I was going to jump. You knew the fireworks would hit me, that I'd fall faster, harder. That's not true. David roared, his face contorted with fury. He grabbed a lamp from the side table and threw it at me, but his aim was off. His leg had been amputated, his balance gone, and it shattered against the wall behind me, showering me with glass. I loved my parents. I loved you. Loved us? I laughed again, this time a sob catching in my throat. You loved the inheritance, David. You loved the money Arthur left you. You hated him for cutting you off, for saying you were a failure, for threatening to change his will so that Lily would get everything instead of you. You hated Martha for taking his side. You hated me for standing by them. And you hated Lily, hated her because she was the one he loved most. I thought back to all the signs, all the things I'd missed. The way David had been gone the night Arthur had died, claiming he'd been working late. The way he'd accidentally left the nail sticking out of the stairwell, the one that had killed Arthur. The way he'd bought Martha that bag of salt, the one that had scattered across the ground like snow when she'd been hit by that car, the car that had run a red light, a car driven by another man with a scar on his cheek. The way he'd tampered with his own brakes, faking the accident so that he could play the victim, so that everyone would pity him, so that he could turn me against Lily. And Lily. Sweet, silent Lily. She hadn't been cursing us. She'd been warning us. She was a seer, not a jinx. She'd seen David's hitman, seen the truck that was supposed to kill Arthur, until I'd kept Arthur inside, until David had been forced to change his plan, to make it look like an accident. She'd seen the car that would hit Martha, the blood that would stain the snow, until I'd swept the snow away, until David had switched to a hit and run, the salt standing in for the snow. She'd seen the brakes failing, the car crash that would kill David, until I'd begged him not to go, until he'd faked the accident, cutting his own leg off to save his skin. She'd seen the fire, the gas that would fill our house, the flames that would burn us alive, until I'd given her that silencing potion, until she'd been forced to write it down instead of saying it out loud. She'd been trying to save us, and I'd punished her for it. I'd silenced her. I'd made her a prisoner in her own body. I'd helped the man who'd killed our family, the man who was about to kill her. The gas was thicker now, clogging my lungs, making my head feel light. I could hear it hissing from the stove, a soft, deadly sound. I could smell it, sweet and sickly, in the back of my throat. Lily was still asleep upstairs, her breathing shallow, the sleeping pill I'd given her keeping her unconscious. If we didn't get out of here soon, we'd all be dead. David was staring at me, his eyes wide with terror. He knew I'd figured it out. He knew the game was over. Sarah, he said, his voice trembling, we can fix this. We can leave together. Just you and me. Forget about Lily. She's a monster. Shut up, I said, my voice cold, colder than Lily had ever been. I turned and ran for the kitchen, my feet slipping on the glass, my hands fumbling for the stove knobs. I twisted them all to the off position, the hissing stopping abruptly. I ran to the front door, yanking it open, fresh air flooding into the house, sweet and clean. I turned back to David, who was trying to will himself himself toward the door, his face twisted with panic. "You're not going anywhere," I said. I grabbed the phone from the table and dialed 911. I told them everything: the hitman, the murders, the gas, the sleeping pill. I told them where we were. I told them to send an ambulance for Lily and the police for David. I hung up and ran upstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I burst into Lily's room, her small body curled up in the bed, her face peaceful, her cheeks still flushed from the sleeping pill. I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry, baby. I was wrong. I was so stupid." Lily's eyes fluttered open. She looked at me, her gaze clear, no longer clouded by the potion I'd given her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at me, and then she opened her mouth, her voice hoarse from disuse, and said one word: "Run." I froze. "What, Lily, what do you—" The sound of breaking glass cut me off. I looked up to see David standing in the doorway, a knife in his hand. His wheelchair was discarded behind him, his prosthetic leg glinting in the dim light. He'd been faking. He'd been able to walk this whole time. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, dangerous, "you should have minded your own business." I grabbed Lily, pulling her into my arms, and ran for the window. I kicked it open, the glass shattering around me, and climbed out onto the fire escape, Lily clinging to me, her small arms wrapped around my neck. I could hear David's footsteps behind me, the sound of his breathing, ragged and angry. I climbed down the fire escape as fast as I could, Lily's weight heavy in my arms, the cold night air biting at my skin. I hit the ground and ran, running down the street, running as fast as I could, away from the house, away from David, away from the life I'd known. I didn't stop until we reached the park, until we were hidden behind a cluster of trees, until I couldn't hear David's footsteps anymore. I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, Lily still clinging to me, her face pressed against my chest. I held her tight as I could, as if I could make up for all the time I'd wasted hating her, fearing her. "It's okay," I whispered. "We're safe now. I promise. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." Lily pulled back, looking up at me. Her eyes were dark, darker than the night sky. She pointed at the horizon, where the first hint of dawn was starting to break, pink and orange and gold. I followed her gaze, my heart stopping in my chest. There, standing at the edge of the park, was a man. A man with a scar slashing across his left cheek. A man wearing a jacket with the logo of the construction company that had built our neighborhood. A man who was supposed to be dead. He was watching us. Lily looked back at me, her voice soft, almost gentle. "He's not alone," she said. I turned to look behind me. The street was lined with them. Dozens of men, all with scars on their cheeks, all wearing the same jacket, all watching us. I held Lily closer, my blood turning to ice. David hadn't hired just one hitman. He'd hired an army, and they weren't just here for us. They were here for anyone who knew the truth about the Jinx's curse, the truth about David's lies, the truth about the man who was still watching us, his eyes cold, his hand resting on the knife at his waist. I looked down at Lily, her face calm, her eyes steady. "What do we do?" I whispered. Lily smiled. It was a small smile, a faint smile, but it was the first smile I'd ever seen on her face. She leaned in, her lips brushing my ear, and said three words that sent a